My name is Johnny Arnstead. I live here in San Marcos. I've lived in San Marcos all of my life. I organized the museum this February, will be 19 years ago.
The history of the museum goes back to the 1990s, to the early 90s, even though the museum didn't open until 1997. But Mrs. Armstead had to start early because the city council had decided to demolish the building. And she knew the building very well. She had lived here most of her life. She drove down Canal Street almost daily, and that was Canal Street before it was MLK. And she had developed a kind of love for the building and just couldn't stand to see it torn down. So she went before the city council and asked them if they would allow her to solicit funds from local businesses to renovate the building and turn it into a museum. And she was very persuasive, Mrs. Armstead was. And the city council agreed. And then she approached HEB and McCoy's and just a number of other businesses, and also individuals. She knew a lot of people, and she was able to get them involved as well. Of course, after Mrs. Armstead died, and I became the president in about 2009 or 2010, and I remained in that role until 2019, I think it was, when Dr. Walks, Schuyler Walks, became the president of our board. And she is doing an excellent job in that leadership role.
So my name is Dr. Schuyler Walks. I have the humble honor of serving as the president of the Calaboose African American History Museum here in San Marcos, Texas. One of the things that I say is my charge and my passion philosophically is to diminish the town and gown relationship between institutions and the communities of which they are a part. They've existed disparately, right? Like there's a disparate institution that is the institution, and then the town and the local community. And I think there's a way to bridge that gap, but I think we have to be very intentional about doing that. This entire area is a gem of African American history, lesser known like so many smaller and more rural areas, but no less important. We have the historic Baptist Church right across the street. We have the Cephas House directly across the street, of which we are now stewards. We have the Calaboose African American History Museum, which was at one point a jail from 1873. So you're talking about within a 1.5 mile radius, history, history, history. And we have a responsibility to do everything that we can, and we can always do it so much better as a collective group, as a collective force of voices than we can independently. What I think is critically important is for institutions to also serve as documentarians of that oral history and those traditions. And I would extend that even more so to say that they should be given support to do so, because we're talking about centuries of history that has been failed to be appropriately and adequately documented in ways that institutions can pass down or duplicate or share out, so that those histories can be captured before our elders transition on to become our ancestors and that history is lost. Or it only stays within local, very local communal spaces.
My home is in Bay City, and I have retired, and so my family wants me to move back to Bay City. And one of the things that's holding me here is the museum. I hate to break my ties with this institution that has been a part of my life for more than 30 years. And I want to see it continue. I'll stay as long as I can, but I know that eventually I'm going to have to go home and stay in Bay City. And there's going to be somebody else who will take my place and continue the work of the museum. But I do know that sometimes the founder of a museum, I'm not the founder, but I was with her when she started it. But sometimes the people who start it, when they leave, then the institution doesn't often survive. And so I'm hoping that won't be the case here, that Dr. Walks and others will be able to keep it going.